I'm Howard Wong.
And this is Josh Stafford. We are the co-writers of Damn Cursed Children, and this is Spoiler Country.
Listeners of Spoiler Country. Today on the show, we have the fantastic Howard Wong and Josh Stafford. How's it going, guys?
Excellent.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Glad to hear it. You guys are hailing from where?
I am from, my closest city would be Toronto, but specifically from Richmond Hill, Ontario.
Very cool.
I'm in Ottawa, Ontario.
Oh, Canadians, where everything is better.
True.
I
I don't want to brag or anything.
Well, we can't. We're Canadians.
No.
We can only agree and say thank you. Thank you.
Over the last 10 years, you guys went from our funny cousins up north to paradise where we would all rather go very quickly in the United States.
Oh, my God. It's, the thing that's interesting about you guys right now is that your narrative has changed from what it was before the previous president and now this president with people burning snow in Texas, which was the last thing I read. It was like, well, it's a little bit better, still crazy, but definitely on better tracks this time, I think.
Yeah, Texas is becoming sort of like another Florida. It's one of those things where we just kind of look at it and we go, yeah, it's them. they try to secede of every few years. We think every once in a while, we could let them.
Well, it keeps things interesting for us, I have to admit. It makes better. It's the best TV that I've watched in a long time.
It's the Quebec of the United States.
Oh, I'm not going to go there. and Ottawa's really close to very close to Quebec. So Josh can comment it all he wants. I don't know that much.
Would you like to add anything to my heinous comment about Quebec, Josh?
Never. All of Canada is good.
So
I don't want to be misquoted and drawn out into the streets.
But as a host of a podcast, I would love that kind of controversy.
Yeah.
In the newspapers, Josh just bashed the entire state of Quebec.
Province, but okay. Sorry. We have the character in that one. That is, we have provinces. We don't states. Yep.
See, that's quaint. Provinces. And so have you guys both been comic fans your entire life?
Yes.
No.
I win.
Really?
Yeah.
But when did this hit you there, Howard?
I knew about comic books like anybody on the planet Earth for sure. I didn't collect them. I mean, I can tell you my first comic book was a Tarzan comic, which I picked up from Scholastic order sheet when I was in school. The second one I bought was a Captain America comic off the spinner rack at the corner store because somebody died. So apparently died in a horror. Well, it wasn't horrible. He got shot by an Uzi through the seat of a taxi cab, which was crazy when you're a kid. But my collection and my awe and crazy expenditure of comic books started when Image came out, to be honest. So because I know it's like everybody, it's because was it flashy? Yes, in the production value, and it was easy to jump on because it was just brand new. So there's no chasing back issues and stuff like that. And I'll be honest, I didn't know how comics really were set. Like I didn't know about how story arcs were. Like one. First, like whatever, every 5 issues of story arc or what have you, that was never in a narrative in school or anywhere in the playground. It was until I saw some friends reading Image books, I started asking, and then they took me to the comic book shop, and I was like, oh my God. And that basically was the rabbit hole that has continued on since then until now. And my collection has far exceeded what I would like, I guess, in a way, because I have stuff in my living room, boxes wise, so it's kind of crazy.
So yeah, Image was for the cool kids back in the day. I mean, if you're in the '90s comic book nerd, that was where the cool nerds hung out, was with Image comic books.
I guess so. I mean, it led to other things. I mean, I went back, because every comic book shop is different, and the ones I went to were into the new stuff. But when you start hanging out with some friends who were like in downtown, like the Silver Snail and stuff, you get back issues of like things like the original TMNT, the ones where they were not eating pizza.
Mirage, back in the Mirage days.
Yeah, back in the day. So it's like stuff like that you pick up. Crap, I picked up this crazy comic, and I I just flashed in my, because I was talking about the story, just flashed in my head. I think it was called Chaos. And I can't remember who did it, who wrote it, but it was all painted and was gorgeous and had people with special abilities. Like, sort of, they're not mutants, but he has like ESP powers and other things, and it was crazy. It was absolutely bonkers, and I loved it. Now I have to dig it up. Oh, no, it wasn't Chaos. So Psycho. It was the title Psycho. It had like a weird happy face kind of thing, that's stitched happy face for the logo. But I still I can't remember where it's from, who did it, and everything. But stuff like that I started picking up because it was just completely different from People in Tights. So I dove into there, and Image also had things like the Max, which was absolutely incredible. Anyone who hasn't read the Max should read the Max. Things like that attracted me and opened up the world of comic books to me, and I just kept them going. And thank God for digital, because some things you can't afford. so digital allowed me to do that. So that's where I started from. So from Scholastic to a corner store to Image, and then that was it. For Josh, it was a little different.
How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I'm a lifer. Like, when I was a very little kid, my dad just randomly got me a Fantastic Four comic, like from the corner store. And that was when I was like 4 years old. And when I was a little kid, it wasn't the pop culture phenomenon it is now, but I was still catching reruns of Wonder Woman and Incredible Hulk. The tail end of Super Friends or Superpowers was still on Saturday mornings. So that was still there. And I just read everything. When I was a little kid, it was just whatever was at the Max Milk. Ottawa has had some really good comic shops back in the day. And I was reading kind of slightly off-center stuff, just like I loved Atari Force and Captain Carrot and Dazzler. And I'm just old enough that I could be snobby when Saturday morning cartoons Ninja Turtle happened, because I love the Mirage stuff. So I got to be like this little 10-year-old sticking his nose up in the air and being like, no, Ninja Turtles all have red headbands. And then, and I never stopped. So I was in high school for the Image Revolution. And then in my college days, I got into, Grant Morrison. And now I'm reading just everything, and I'll never stop. It's just like the same way I watch movies or TV or listen to music. Comic books are a forever thing for me, for sure.
It just gets into your blood, doesn't it? Once the comic book bug gets into you, it really is hard to, to get rid of, to dump. It's basically it really is an addiction in a real way.
Yeah, and I never understand when people say they outgrow it, because very rarely do you hear people say they outgrew music or TV or movies. But you do hear people, even today, say like, oh, I read Archie when I was a little kid, or I watched Saturday morning cartoons when I was a little kid. It's getting better because people realize now that there's stuff out there like Saga, or, for decades, are Neil Gaiman's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, even if you get fed up with superheroes, there is endless amounts of content all over the place. So, yeah, I read a ton of superheroes, but I read every genre pretty much.
I think what they mean is I outgrew those comic books, and I have not been able to find better ones. I mean, that seems to be what the issue is, that it is a lack of exposure, I would say, is those who think they've outgrown comic books. I think there's a comic book out there for almost every kind of fan possible at this point.
Yeah, and then people are shocked when they find out that History of Violence or Road to Perdition or Ghost World, stuff that they may have seen as movies, are comic books, because there's still that sense of like, oh, it's not a guy with his underwear outside of his pants and a cape. But
yes, absolutely.
There's everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a good point that you brought up, because a lot of people don't realize how many movies that they love and watch and became franchises were actually based on comic books. Like when I tell people Men in Black was a shitty, weird comic book that did actually reference Ray-Bans, and that's why they're using Ray-Bans in the movie and marketing. They're like, what are you talking about? And then they look it up and like, oh my God, like, yeah. And Road to Perdition was a big one. When I told that to people, that blew their mind, because there's like, this is such a, it's pretty deep. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's not the deepest thing you can read. I mean, there's like Watchmen. It's like, what's that? Oh. So it became a gateway to some of my friends who are very book nerds versus comic book nerds. And then the pure, I'm going to call them, pure book nerds are sort of anti-comic books. They see them as not books, and they're not. But they basically don't see them the same level as them. That's North America, though. If you go to Europe or Asia, people read comic books like out open. They're reading it on the commute to work and stuff like that. And it's a whole different genre as a medium there in those kind of areas. It's just North America where if you say grab any comic book, it doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter. And you go into the subway and start reading it, people automatically you lose like respect points from a lot of people automatically. They don't care what the content is in their book though, which is really weird to me because I always found that if you enjoy something and it's nothing weird and it connects to you in a lot of ways, why not, right? It's just sort of the same way why some people see the cosplayers. They just don't respect their craft as well as their narrative that they bring to that property. And if you don't get it, but then not getting is one thing, but putting it aside and talking down to it is the other thing because you didn't do the research to understand it. Because how some people see wine and stuff and go nuts over it, some people do that for other things too, right? So it's sort of this. You're still geeking over something, but it may not be comic books, right? But it's the same love, same passion, same devotion of time and money and energy to something that not necessarily will change your life in any profound way unless you let it, right?
I think you have a great point, and I don't think it's a lot of things that people would understand. Like those who are, as you said, wine tasters, anyone who is passionate to a unusual degree of one thing is a geek. If you're a wine taster who goes wine testing all over the place, you're a wine geek. That is what you are. You might think you're more highly, mature than that, but you're just a geek. You're just a different type of geek, a very singular type of geek. And I think what I like about the media the way it is now with movies and TV and everything else is that geek has become an acceptable term instead of an insult.
Yes, because it's bankable now.
Yes, I think for some people.
Well, yeah, not for all studios and companies, but I think geek has become synonymous to we can make profit and it's a viable thing. Because if you look, what's it 20? I would say 20 years ago or maybe more, not so much. I mean, think of when the first Batman film came out with Michael Keaton. It was packed. Every theater was packed, right? Did they expect that? No, they weren't sure if it was going to work or not. And especially, forget who directed it, was Tim Burton, right? So it's sort of like, is this going to work? And people didn't realize, people who had worked in the theaters during that time, when the names came up, when Jack Nicholson's name came up, when Michael Keaton's name came up, people clapped. It was the most weird, bizarre, wonderful thing ever I experienced in the movie theater, where people were clapping at people's names showing up on the screen. And then the movie finished, and everybody's like, "Holy crap, that was a great film!" And it was not. And a lot of people loved it, and believe it or not, some people didn't like it because they expected the Adam West kind of Batman with his, kind of goofy and whimsical and stuff like that. So this brought the superheroes into a whole different light. But it was back then when people started realizing, we can actually make this work if we do it right. And that's why we had sequels for Batman. And then Superman. Well, Superman was always a staple, though, right? Like, it was always a go-to for when you say superhero film, you'll see Superman and Batman as the first front runners for live action, right? Beyond the TV series and stuff like that. But people don't realize that we were doing that back then. Had they invested more time and effort back then, this genre would have been existing way back then. And the thing is that geeks didn't change; those geeks just got older. So.
It is funny that 60 years later, the effect of the Batman TV show from the 60s is still trying to be wiped off from comic books and movies at this point, at least in my opinion.
Well, I like that Batman 66 has really been embraced because I love Batman of all kinds. That's what I love about the character is that he can be used in Batman 66, 89, Super Friends, Dark Knight Returns, Chris Nolan, but Batman 66, especially in the past few years with them doing like the monthly comic and merchandising and another animated film, you really see the influence on writers like Grant Morrison. And it's almost like with Doctor Who, where even if it's not yours, it's still part of the legacy. And Batman 66 is crazy important because like that was comic books for a lot of people. And you ask any comic writer or artist who grew up around then, they watched that show and it wasn't campy, which I think is hilarious. Like you hear writers saying they would go to school the next day and clearly Robin and Batman weren't going to die. And they'd be at school and they'd be like, oh my God, how are they going to get out of this one? And be really scared. So yeah, it's just very interesting how every generation now has their Batman, where it's like Michael Keaton is my Batman, my mom, Adam West was her Batman, and some little kid now in a couple years, Robert Pattinson's going to be their Batman, and Michael Keaton Batman is over 30 years ago. So people forget that too. Like it's giant leaps in time. And it's the same with James Bond, it's same with Doctor Who. So yeah, that's what I like about mainstream comics is that legacy, I think is pretty cool.
Well, what's going to blow people's minds soon? Supposedly, Michael Keaton was signed for the new Flash movie. Now that's going to blow some people's minds. Now you're going to have Pattinson Batman, Ben Affleck Batman, and Michael Keaton Batman all hanging around DC at the same time. That's going to make 3 generations almost of comic book fans extremely happy.
Yeah, I hope they're not lying to me. I want Michael Keaton back for sure.
That'd be absolutely tremendous. So when did you guys are both working on a comic book, Damn Cursed Children. I think, did we lose Howard? We just lost Howard.
I was going to say, I think we lost Howard.
Howard ran away. He's like, fuck you guys. He just like bolted.
I just told Josh some news. I can't share it right now because I need to confirm it, but it's pretty cool.
Howard's getting cool stuff for our trade.
Oh, fantastic!
But I'll let him know that you hate his guts and you want instead, and then
no.
That goes.
I can't say anything more without spoiling it on Spoiler Country, but I love this person. I just love another person associated with this person a tiny bit more. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
I'll let him know when I can.
He'll know. He knows.
Well, like I said, when you find out, please let us know. We'll advertise it the best we can.
Yeah, well, don't worry. We'll be shouting it from the rooftops. I'm pulling. I'm not going to sugarcoat. I'm pulling some strings of people that I've known online, and sometimes I would not really know them, like we hang out, after and whatnot, but known them online forever to people who I've met actually at conventions, tabling and stuff like that, who I've known for a long time online as well. I mean, it's like me knowing you, so same kind of thing. So it's one of those things where I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna pull some strings for this because I'm actually very proud of this book, and because it took a long time to be made, so I want to give it the right, I don't know, I want to call it christening of a trade that it should get in my book. In my opinion, that kind of sounded weird when I said that out loud. Maybe.
No, I think that's fantastic for you guys. So anyways, I'm going to pause. We're going to make pretend we started off where we left off. I think we left off with discussing, was it collaboration for how do you guys first started collaborating in the book, or was we started on something else?
I don't know. I was cut out first, so.
I don't think we talked about that. Yeah, we could talk about our secret origins.
Yeah, let's talk about secret origins of the Howard-Josh partnership, and we'll go from there. And when the next fuck up happens, I'll get annoyed by that too on my side, because apparently my computer hates me.
No worries, man. No worries.
All right, so let's pause. I'm gonna introduce the question, and then we'll start rolling.
All right.
So you guys are teamed up on the new book, Damn Cursed Children. How did your collaboration first start?
I was sick in bed. For the umpteenth time my kids were in daycare, so we would bring back the different versions of the Plague home because it was fun. And Josh called me up on one of those occasions, seeing if I would be alive and functioning to go to Fan Expo here in Toronto, and to bring him along as my table helper so he can, not help and run around. No, he helped. He actually helped a lot. He helps a great lot.
I'm a good helper.
So when Josh found out I was sick, because I was like coughing and I think blowing like rivers of snot all over the phone, which was awesome, he asked a simple question like, "Are you sick again, or are you still sick?" And I was like, "I don't know. I think I'm sick and sick again. I think it's both." And then Josh blurted out, "You can go ahead. You can say it. It's your line."
I said, "Damn Cursed Children," and Howard laughed and basically said, "That's a good name for a comic." And I said, "Go write it." And he said he was too sick. And it just kind of spiraled from there. And it sounds goofy, but it's, inspiration comes from strange things. And then you just have to have the kind of ambition and right time in the right place to go and do it. And now Damn Cursed Children is like a 10-year overnight success story.
Yeah, my kids are like tweens, so that tells you a lot how long ago how long we've been working on this thing. So yeah, we were collaborating from that point on it, because first I thought I said as a joke that would make a great comic book title and a great horror book, and I was like, you know what, you know more about horror than I do, I think. I don't know, because I was out of my mind. I was like drugged up on antibiotics and shit, so I was like a little like eh. So when we got down to really writing it, it was a fantastic collaboration. I have to spit on here, because we never argued, we never fought, even though sometimes I don't agree with certain scenes and sometimes he didn't agree with some of my scenes. We don't like slam the table or call each other names and stuff like that. I guess it's very Canadian, I guess, in a way, but it's sort of like we would explain why we wanted to do a scene a certain way or have a character do a certain thing, and then the person would challenge it. It wasn't like challenging in the way to say you're an idiot, this is not good. It was more like, well, would they think this way? Would they do this because of X, Y, and Z? And then you naturally create a better scene that way. So it was like a mini writer's room between me and Josh, if you ask me, but in the nicest possible way possible, because there was no head writer where it's like, this is the way we're doing it, done. This is the direction, done. So it was always a collaborative work in all senses of the word. So it was beautifully written that way. Well, I mean, we joked about why, about the 10-year thing. It wasn't because it took us 10 years to write it. Thank God. And it didn't take 10 years for Robin Simon Ng to draw it. It was because I tried pitching it to a lot of publishers at that time, and they loved the idea. They loved the art, they loved the story, they loved where we're going with it, but it wasn't suitable for the publisher's wheelhouse of books. So it made sense. I mean, I totally understand that. I mean, because I don't like go out and randomly and blind pitch to people not knowing what they publish. And for those who are wondering who you should, how you should pitch and to how you should pitch your stuff, definitely don't pitch like horrific, scary horror book to a publisher who only does all ages fun books. That's a terrible idea. You got to know what they're doing. So the reason why this came about was because sometimes, at conventions, people ask you what you're working on. Do you have anything to pitch me? And like, well, this is what I've been working on and I really like it, but I don't think it's for you, but here we go. And that's what happened. And so a lot of people out there do know about Damn Cursed Children and have been waiting for a decade to see it in book form. But again, it's one of those, like I said, Josh mentioned, those happy incidents of stories of how we collaborated and got the story written and done.
I think the key is when you're working on anything in collaboration is you just can't be precious about your ideas. Like you have to share them. You have to take critique. And I think sometimes when you hear about, a director or a writer leaving a movie or a comic book project, a lot of time it's that. Like if I was like, oh, I think she should wear Converse, and Howard says, I like boots. Yeah, there was no table flipping. I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. We can go the other way. And we're very different coming at it, where Howard has kids. So I think that was really great, because there was times where Howard might be like, oh, I think this might be too much. This might be too much for a horror comic, even though kids are the villains. And I would be like, now let's do it. But we got that different perspective. And I think Howard brought a lot of the parent point of view with a couple of our characters, for sure, of putting in a bit more. Because like our book is not as heavy as Walking Dead, but it has a lot of drama in it. Our book is not as goofy as Army of Darkness, but it has a lot of fun, action, and adventure in it. So we're kind of right in the middle there. And, horror is repetitious. The same stories have been done over and over again, werewolves and Frankensteins and Draculas. So this is kind of a zombie story, but I snobby argue that they're not zombies because they're not undead, they're not crawling from the grave, they're just these feral children. So we just kind of do our best to bring new characters and plot lines to the genre. And comic books are fun because there's no budget, so you really get to just go crazy.
So would you say that Damn Cursed Children is sort of like The Walking Dead meets Children of the Corn?
Ooh.
Kind of. The funny thing as well, Howard and I do not know anything about Walking Dead. We are this weird, like, no disrespect to Robert Kirkman. I've heard him on a number of podcasts. Seems like a great guy. Just Walking Dead, was too heavy for me. Even though I'm a horror fan, it was just like, I was like, oh, these guys, there's no happy ending here. I know this is just going to get worse and worse.
Yeah, so if you're listening, Robert Kirkman, we love you. Please pay us to do comic books for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just so happened to have met Robert last day at San Diego Comic-Con back in, I'm going to say 06 or 07. It's the same time I actually met Josh back in 06 and 07, I think. And it was like the last day, and the con was done. We were all packing up and leaving and stuff. And he was literally just walking past, I was at the Image booth with After the Cape. And so he was walking by. And I was like, hey, you're Robert Kirkman. I know that's really stupid to say that, but I'm going to say that because I'm too tired to care. And then we started talking about our kids and stuff. And it was nothing about books, nothing about writing. It was just talking about, what he should expect for, because he, at that time, he had a very young child at his home and stuff, and was just asking dad questions, which was really cool. And then sure enough, there's some people who came up, it's like, The Walking Dead, and you can just see, he's like, yeah, here he goes. and I sort of sat there going, wow, I'm going to be adding absolutely nothing to this conversation now. I'm just going to turn around and pack my crap to go. And that's really what happens, like, because he was sort of waited for me to add to it, and then I don't know if you remember, because it's like a long time ago, and he kind of was like, he didn't ask why I didn't say anything. I honestly told him, like, I'm going to be honest, I know about The Walking Dead. I never read it. I even know about the alien story thing that didn't, the whole bit, but I don't know. I didn't read it because, I'll be frank, I didn't have a strong desire to read. I mean, I read the first issue, I think, or two, and I was like, it didn't hit me at that time. And I told him that maybe later on that happens, because sometimes you read something that someone suggested, and because of whatever reason, you don't like it. And then 4 years later, you read it like, it's the best crap ever. So, but I haven't really got into it. I tried watching the show a few times, and I was sort of like, nah, not for me. I don't want to invest this much amount of time. And I think I was really busy at that time too. So it was like a horrible time for me to try to watch anything. So I never know. Maybe I'll try to get back into and then backtrack into The Walking Dead, both comic books and or TV series, AMC series in the future. Because I know that he just hit Netflix in Canada. I noticed it pop up on my feed like a week ago, and I was like, do I want to jump in this rabbit hole? But it is a pandemic, so it's a good time. you never know. But
for myself, I would say Night of the Living Dead. George Romero is for sure a giant influence on me, and on Robert Kirkman, I'm sure. But I think our character archetypes and kind of a little bit of that normal people in a world gone mad is definitely the George Romero Night of the Living Dead style. That is something that I super love.
So, but my understanding, so that's the world of the slow zombies. Your children are definitely not anywhere in the world of slow zombies, right? They seem pretty ferocious, pretty hyper.
Yeah. And like I said,
they're sugar zombies.
They're not zombies. I say they're more. I put them more akin to like Joe Dante Gremlins, because they're smart, they're mischievous, they're fast, they're mean, but they're not zombies in that they're not. Yeah, they're the big thing. They're not crawling out of the grave. You can shoot them anywhere and kill them. It's not just like a brain kill, and it doesn't spread. They're not spreading to anything else. But yeah, so they're I think they're more like gremlins than a zombie kind of.
Are you guys going to explore where whatever it is that turned the children into this came from? Or are you going to do like a Walking Dead where they kind of just ignore it?
Well, for now, I can tell you that we're not going to reveal it yet. We don't have any discussions as to when and how we would do it, because it makes, I'll be honest, it makes us better writers in that sense, because it's sort of that crux of, we have notes here and there, and personal notes and what have you, and theories and whatnot, but by not trying to work around that and then leave it open enough so that we can feed into what we've created to answer that question, makes it more exciting for us to write. And it sounds weird to say that, but it is, because every time when we're writing I remember writing a certain scene, I was like, we need to explain this, and then because it doesn't kind of make sense, and just like, no, you don't need to. And then he would reference like different movies, like we just mentioned even, and I was like, oh yeah, shit, you're right. We can work around that. Hell, that's more exciting and more scary actually, and that's what ended up happening.
Like, again, I can't talk for Walking Dead, but Night of the Living Dead, like the cornerstone, that's its whole thing. Is is they never explain it. Even throughout the whole like original Dead trilogy, there's never a part where they're like, oh, it came from a bat or it was an alien. And I think that's more scary. It's just unknown. And even kind of real classic horror or monster things, like they never explained in Creature of the Black Lagoon where he came from. It was just there. So you don't really need that origin story in terms of the monster. It's really the what they are doing to your characters in the moment is what's important, not, oh, it came from toxic waste.
Well, I will say one thing I love about the look of your comics as well is that it has at least the covers, a very EC comic vibe to it. Like it reminds me of like Vault of Horror, Tales from the Crypt, those old grade school. And so was that intentional? Was that the nod?
Yes. Originally, we didn't go that route. We had some covers that, I don't know, they were great. I mean, Robin did amazing covers, but I sat there looking at them like, you sort of know, I don't know if it hits you or not. And it didn't hit me the right way. It was like, there's something that's missing. Talking to Josh about ideas for the covers and stuff. And we end up talking about the EC comics and horror movies that we liked. And it's like, how come those movies and those comics, speak to us in so many different ways? And I'm like, why don't we just do homages on that and see if it works or not? Because, as you know, homages could go really, really great, or it could be really, really bad. So we asked Robin to give it a go on a few ideas, and apparently he doesn't watch a lot of horror or anything. So it was so weird, it's sort of like, so you don't know about this movie? No. You watch this movie? No. Have you watched any movie? But what ended up happening was Josh and I basically flooded an email to him with just references after references. I mean, it was definitely far beyond what he needed, but then it gave him the sense of what artistic direction that we wanted for it. For the EC covers, because he never read an EC comic ever. So I said, don't worry about not reading them. It's the cover that conveys different things. And it's hard to explain to someone who hasn't read them for at all what they really mean. The covers are to draw you in and then keep you in with the story, and not. And it's a little bit of hokiness to it. A lot of it's a lot of different levels and layers for these covers. So when I try to explain to him, he's like, is this kind of weird and kind of like silly? He's like, yes. But it's also dark and scary at the same time. It's like for issue 2, which is will be out actually this Wednesday. Actually, I think that cover, you see children being hurled around. Is it funny? Kinda. Is it wrong? Yes. It's kind of scary? Yeah, exactly. And that's when he sort of understood that like this is a lot of layers happening at the same time. It's not a heroic pose. It's not an iconic hero standing there victorious. It's not that. It is completely bonkers off the wall, everything at the same time. So once he wrapped his mind around that, he killed it. So from issue 1 to issue 5, he drew more covers than what we obviously used from 1 to 5, and all of them worked well. All of them are great. And it took us a long time to honestly vote on which ones we're going to be in with the Source Point Press guys. We actually did a voting system to figure which covers we're going to make it, because all of them were great. So, it's one of those, beautiful, awesome situations to be in where you can pick and choose, the best covers that are going to be in the top 5, I guess, in the sense.
So the entire series is done in black and white. So what led to the decision to keep it as a black and white comic?
A good happy accident. And again, it's Robin didn't really know the genre, so he wasn't tracing anybody. But I'm a big fan of the 1970s Marvel horror, kind of those oversized magazine comics that came out during the whole real satanic panic Kiss days of the 70s. And Robin's art, like if you didn't look at the cover, if you were just looking at the pages and didn't spot like, a cell phone or a flat screen TV in the comic, you could easily think it was from back then. Like his art looks so perfect for that era. And gladly our publisher was just okay with black and white, because you would think that, I've heard stories of this of saying like, no, you have to be in color. Kids today don't like black and white or whatever like that. And it just really fits. It fits as a homage to Night of the Living Dead, and it fits as a homage to those old horror comics of the 70s, and it really works with his style very well.
So, like I said, and I think it really is great that it is a throwback to the old, it feels like the Hammer classic horror movies from back in the 50s, and has that great feel to it. Because like you said, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but also real and scary at the same time. And I think that's a great homage that you're doing to that. The comic also starts in media res, where you kind of it just starts with everything already has happened. The children has already gone nuts. It kind of has that Edgar Allan Poe, that singular effect feel, where you start off the first page with an exclamation point, and every page kind of just builds on it.
Yeah, it wasn't like super conscious of we're going to do this right like this immediately. Because when we started writing all this, I told Josh that we usually show 5 pages of previews when you put your book out. So if you don't give the tone and the direction if you're going within 5, you may not get people to pick up the book because they don't get what you're doing. And Josh came back to me, he's like, "Well, in film we do it in 3." I'm like, "What? Really? You can do this in 3?" So Josh is like, "Yeah, let's do it in 3." So we actually worked it so that we attempted at that time to do it in 3 pages, where we just jumped right into the insanity of it all. And I won't lie, I actually was kind of concerned, we have no character build up, we have nothing, we're not telling people anything. Will this work, or will this not work at all? And Josh's like, "I'm gonna do it, watch me do it." And then he plotted it out, and I looked at it, and I remember sitting there for the first time I looked at it, I was like, this actually works, because as I imagine the pages being flipped from page 1, 2, and then 3, you're like, crap, yeah, this is going to work, because after that, it's a page turner right after that, and it's beautifully executed. So, I did doubt it. Josh never doubted it. He kept on pushing it to the agenda to make it shorter, faster. It's going to start faster. I know that's the same thing in any story. You got to start, as much into the action as you can. But I'm like, there's no build up, though. Are you sure? But he proved me wrong, and I'm glad he did, because I looked at it. When I look back at it, I was sort of I doubted it. I even told him that this is, may not be the best way to do it, but he stuck to his guns, and here we are. And I mean, for an intro, it's the best intro that I have worked on in any book so far. A case in point, when I showed my wife the pages because I let her too, so I showed my wife the first issue. After page 2, all you hear was her swearing. It's I'm like, yep, we did our job, because it's messing her up too, so that's good.
And then we have 5 issues, so it's not just 5 issues of kids attacking people, but we really get to build up the characters over those 5 issues. And it's the most writer cliche, but what I fell in love with our characters is I felt bad about killing them. And I won't spoil who dies, but it's a horror film or a horror comic. And yeah, so you really get some time to build up the characters, and we've got some really original people in there. And already it's the biggest compliment we've gotten is just, people we don't know saying nice things about the book has been the most ego boost of a thing, of folks we've talked about on with podcasts or people on social media saying nice things, comic stores. And so it's nice that 1 issue in, we're making a little footprint in the readers' minds.
Yeah,
1 second.
Absolutely. Yeah, no worries.
My dog is now being a jerk. It's going to be one of those interviews,
No problem. I have 2 dogs and I have kids, and so far they're being very civil, which is very seldom, which is kind of nice. So absolutely no problem.
The other thing I really like about the comic book that you guys wrote is that it does start off in a very minimalist sense. Like I said, it's sparse on dialogue. It's basically images telling the story. And I think I got a sense in reading the beginning of the comic book that a lot of it had to do with extreme trust in the artists, as well as being somebody who could tell the story without a lot of captions, dialogue, just let the pictures tell the story as well. Was that also part of the intent, or was that going to be a decision regardless of who the artist was?
Well, we knew who the artist was at the beginning, because Robin was actually an artist I wanted to work with on After the Cape too, but he had a child, so he didn't have time when we got greenlit and stuff. But I kept in contact with him because I loved his art back then, and I wanted to work with him. It just so happened that when we finished scripting this, I asked Robin, "Do you want to do a horror book?" It's like, "Really? You write horror?" I'm like, I do. And then he read it, he liked it, and then he wanted to do it, which is great. So we knew who the artist was going to be on it. As to the conscious effort on letting the art speak for itself, that was not as much of a goal as it was to reflect how a person would really react in the situation. In movies and other media, there's always like a lot of exposition. They're talking a lot. But in reality, if you had a bunch of children around you coming at you to eat you, you wouldn't be talking a lot. You might swear a lot
Yeah.
and scream and then figure out what you're going to do at that second. So we wanted to reflect that feeling because whatever is going in your mind, it's not going to be rational. It's a knee-jerk reaction. When you have a knee-jerk reaction, you're not going to say a lot. So and a lot of people can, they experience this. It's sort of like when especially when now we have winter, right? We're walking and you slip on some ice. You're not going to go, I'm going to do a soliloquy in my head right now. You're going to swear and pray that you don't like land flat in your face or your back, right? Like you're doing whatever you can not to fall down, but you're not thinking about words. You might swear a lot or scream. That's exactly the same thing here. So we took that as a conscious effort into writing the characters as realistic as possible in that sense. Robin did ask us, are you sure you don't want to have word balloons here, here, and here? There's a lot of space for you to do that. And we said no, because this is the reaction that should be that she should have, or he has, or what have you, because of the situation they're in. They wouldn't be thinking about anything besides what the hell, and then a lot of, swear words after that, and then be it running or bashing, whichever it may happen as depending on the character. So we kept that as a conscious effort to not make them go into, I'm going to do a long 5-panel speech here about how I feel about all of this, because no one's going to have that in their head.
So I think one of the interesting about your comic book, that I think it brings up an interesting idea of whether or not adults have a primal fear of losing control of children. Do you think the kind of comic book plays up on the idea that as an adult, as someone who does have kids, one of your concerns is what the fuck happens if I can't control them anymore? That what if, they can do what they want at that point? Do you think there's any relationship there that you're tapping into?
That's a really interesting question. I'm gonna let Josh answer that first.
Yeah, because I mean, it is like our comic is a fun horror comic, but the serious moments of it, there's 2 parents in the book who have to face some pretty terrible things, and I think that is the highbrow portion of the comic is contemplating how far you might go. And just the horrors of the thought of having to do something terrible to protect yourself against a monster that happens to be an adorable 8-year-old. So yeah, for sure. Like that is the horror within our book, is the horror of this having both happened to the children and the aftermath of our characters having to survive in this world with these children.
Yeah, it's a lot of layers here for the adults who have relationships with young children, be it guardians, parents, uncles, or aunts, grandfathers, grandmothers, and so forth. It is that fact. It's not really, I wouldn't say controlling of the child. It's more like when you are in a guardianship of a child, your duty is to make sure that they're safe and sound, and that they're obviously the best is to be happy and what have you. So if you ask yourself, what happens if you can't do that? And then you have to do the exact opposite of that. Do you do that? How far can you go? And if you go past that line that you basically have drawn long ago in your head, what happens to you psychologically? So there's a lot of layers there. Even when I wrote it, I have to ask myself, if I was in so-and-so's shoes, could I really do this? Because maybe not. And maybe I would go up until a ball and go, I'm done. You win. Go for it. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of scenes where I go back and forth in my own personal emotions to reflect how, whichever character we're writing at that time, how they would respond to something. So it is definitely a lot of connections to being a parent, where some of these scenes are tough and hard. And then are the decisions made by X character or Y character right? that's up to you as a reader. To me, there's no real right or wrong answer, which is why it's so tough. I mean, there are times when we were scripting this, when Josh asked me questions like, would you react like this? And I give like the worst answer. I don't know, which doesn't help writing, but I really don't know, because part of me would think, yeah, I could do that. But the other part of me is like, no, that's terrible. I can't do that. I'll be the monster then. We can't. And then Josh's like, you have to become the monster, survive the monsters. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know if I can. Can I? And then that's the whole point. That pushing and pulling in myself is what made me very interested in writing characters who have a direct connection with children in this story, because it's the toughest thing to do. It's the toughest thing to drive your characters towards either end of the spectrum I just mentioned.
I do wonder too, is there also part of the fun is that most adults have this need to vicariously maybe beat the crap out of unruly children as well. We're like, thank God someone is beating the crap out of those rotting kids.
Well, I knew we couldn't pull punches in this book, and a very early scene, I think the first violent scene, is one of our main characters, a daycare teacher, finds herself in a room filled with kids who, in a snap, have turned feral. And one jumps at her, and she clocks him with a coffee mug. And I remember Howard being like, I think that's too much. And so that was just a coffee mug. But it's a great panel with this great little, like, thwack when he gets hit. And then we go from there, and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So... yeah, I think there is, like, I think parents are afraid of their kids, jokingly, like if a kid's being a jerk or if a kid's throwing a tantrum. So just imagine that, but every single kid is doing that and they're murderous.
Well, about parents who dream and wish or think about, putting a smackdown on their kids. Please don't, by the way. This obviously don't do that. But right. Yes, has every parent thought had that thought cross their head? Sometimes. I'm pretty sure they have. It's like, it's like you think about stuff, but you not do it. But you think about it because at that moment you're like, oh, I'm so frustrated. That's one of the thoughts that streams through your head at the same time as the other thoughts. Because at the end, you decide on the good thing that you should do, the right thing you should do, because you have time to do that, right? I mean, I had friends who, like me, had kids, and then asked me, "You told me the kids were great." I'm like, "Yeah, I wasn't told the truth either, so have fun." I'm kidding. I'm absolutely kidding. That's a joke, maybe. Friends who were younger than me who had kids, and they're driving me crazy, and I can hear them on the phone screaming away, toddlers going nuts. Totally Bart Simpson style. You can actually hear pots and pans being banged. Yeah. And I'm like, it'd be like, how long has that been going on? I don't know, 3 hours. I'm like, wow, you let them do that for 3 hours straight? That's pretty impressive. Have you tried talking to your kids? Like, yeah, tell them to stop. That's not talking. You're telling him what you want to do.
Yeah.
You ever tried asking him what he wants to do and why he's doing that, and then start from there, and then maybe find something that you guys can do together that doesn't involve banging pots and pans for the next 3 hours. Maybe watch TV. Surprise! Together though, not just sit him in front of a TV and leave him alone. Like, be with them.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where you can hear the frustration in your friend's voice. They're thinking about smacking their kid, and you can hear it in their voice. And I'm literally looking for someone to say, "Yeah, do it," but I can't. I won't let anyone do that, because there's always another way of finding a connection with your kids, no matter what age they are. I mean, my kids are tweens, so they're obviously driving me up the wall in a whole different way, where it's sort of like, I wish you were banging pots and pans so that we can talk, versus not talking at all at this point. But you find different challenges as a parent. So it's those thoughts that you mentioned about I want to smack my kid. Yeah, it would come into play in your head, but then it makes you question, what kind of parent am I that I had this thought? Why did I have this thought? And am I a bad parent because I had this thought? And I can tell you right now, you're not a bad parent. You're working it out because you're learning how to be a parent. So no one's going to give you, no one has the right answers. There's 1,000 books out there. Trust me, there's thousands of books out there that tell you, in quotation, what you can and should do with your child. Really? Because if any of those were right, that would be the book. It would
Yeah.
be the Bible for every single parent on the planet. Trust me,
Yeah.
it would be a bestseller. There's no perfect book because you're learning how to navigate the world with the kid, and every kid is different, right?
So
Yeah.
So how many issues is Damn Cursed Children set for?
5.
Thousands.
Thousands.
Thousands. 5. Right now, the first story arc is 5 issues, but we do have more, depending on if people want more.
That's fantastic. And so you said the second issue is coming out when?
Tomorrow. I can actually tell you that one of my local shops, Heroes World up here in Markham, Ontario, already has copies in their store. She sent me a bunch of photos of it. So it was kind of crazy to see that it was already here in Tuesday.
Well, very cool. And like I said, I hope our listeners definitely pick up the issues of Damn Cursed Children, 5-issue stories. And like I said, enjoy it. On the one hand, you can be frightened of evil children. On the other hand, you watch them get their ass kicked. It's great in both senses. So thank you very much, Howard Wong and Josh Stafford, for talking with me. You guys are fantastic. And the book is extremely entertaining. I got the chance to read the first issue and previews of the 2 and 3. Enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
You. Thank you for having us. It's been a very enjoyable time.
Thank you. And I appreciate you dealing with all the crap that occurred during the interview, which normally does not happen and hopefully does not ever happen again.
No worries.
No problem.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a very good night. And once this goes live, I'll give you guys the link.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Man. Thanks a
All
lot,
right.
Jeff.
Have a good night.
Bye,
You too.
Howard.
Bye.
Spaghetti!
And we're back. That's right. We are back. Back in the saddle again. Well, I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that as much as we did making it for you. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, you got to go check out spoilerverse.com, because at spoilerverse.com, we have a plethora amazing directors and artists of all walks of life, and editors and writers, and oh my God, are you a lover of comic books like we are? Then there's so many amazing people from the comic book world over at spoilerverse.com, and I highly implore you to go there and check it out.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts on our network, like Bridges and Geekdoms and Funny Book Forensics and Haphazard Adventures and Nerds from the Crypt and so many more.
Misery
We put out
Point Radio.
episodes all the time. Go check all of them out. And check out all of the reviews and previews and articles we have going up every single day for you. Every day on spoilerverse.com for you to check out and to read and to love and to like and to comment. We have a store link. If you want to help support the site, you can do it 2 ways. One, go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/spoilercountry. Or go to our store link in the middle of the site there and get a t-shirt, a face mask, a hoodie, something, look fly as hell, and help support the site when you do that, because we get $1 or $2. And, maybe you want to talk to us. If you do, you can do it obviously on all the socials, but if you go to scpod.us/discord, you can join our public Discord server and come chat with us all day long.
I couldn't say it better myself, dude.
There you go.
You just mouthed out a ton of information at once, and really, I hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, because we're working our butts off to bring it to you.
We are.
I guess there's only one left thing. One left thing? Yeah, I'm going to go with it. There's only one left thing left to do.
What's that?
In an oceans of podcasts, we are Cthulhu. As Cthulhu compels you to open the mind and read more.
Spaghetti.